a successful Canadian Jewish actor, director and producer who moved to Poland 5 years ago to explore his Jewish roots. Along the way, Michael discovered artistic fulfillment, founded a theatre festival in Krakow called Festival Alt, won an award for his show Alte Heim or Old House, met the woman who became his wife, started a family and even discovered that Poles never throw away their empty jam jars. Michael, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
My pleasure.
So what's the cultural roots of never throwing jam jars? Well, what's that all about?
Well, I mean, that was my question. I made a video on social media recently because my wife just never throws out jars, and I don't know why. And it seems to be a pretty common thing in Poland.
It is, for those famous Polish pickles. But on a more serious note, Michael, you moved to Poland to explore your relationship with your mother, a relationship that in which Holocaust, or the legacy of Holocaust, seemed to play a big part. Could you share your journey with us?
Sure. Well, my grandparents were all Polish originally. They were all Holocaust survivors on my mother's side. And my mother and I just had never been to Poland ever before. And we grew up with a negative relationship to this country, as do a lot of Jews who are descendants of Holocaust survivors. And so I had the idea that my mother and I should go to Poland and we should actually see this place that we're from and see if we can develop a positive relationship to it. And so she agreed. She's not a performer, I am, and she came with me to Poland. We visited my grandmother's hometown. We visited my grandfather's hometown. And we had a pretty seminal experience. But we realized that our trauma really clouded our relationship to this country. So while we might have we might have seen something that we thought was negative that was occurring, in fact, there were a lot of positive things happening, but our fear was really clouding our judgment about the country, and we were able to make a piece about that. And at the time, I didn't know that the end of that piece would involve me deciding to actually move here to continue the journey, which I did.
And do you feel that your relationship with your mum was healed along the way, mediated through that Polish experience?
I think certainly what was great about the experience was that, first of all, making a piece of art with my mother was a really beautiful experience. And also redefining our history and our relationship to this country was important. I think when we thought about our history, it tended to just sort of land on the Holocaust, and that was it. And then Canada, where we grew up in, and so we've been able to backdate our history pre-Holocaust, and and connect to the things that were actually positive about Poland, and even learn about the things that were positive about Poland. The Holocaust cuts off of Jews' relationship to the really incredible 700-800 year history of Jews in Poland, and I feel like we share that now, and that's been really beautiful between us. Yeah.
And right now, just before that milestone of an anniversary, the 80th year anniversary of the liberation of Oświęcim, Auschwitz concentration camp, do you resent that sort of the spotlight is on the Holocaust survivors or the families of that are marked by the Holocaust? We look up to you to provide some sort of a commentary, some sort of an explanation how we should feel. How does that sit with you?
I mean, I would never resent any focus on the Holocaust. It's important to always continue to focus on it. I lost a lot of family in the Holocaust. My grandmother was an Auschwitz survivor. My grandfather jumped off of a train on the way to Treblinka. We lost so much, and it's really important to continue to honor that and to memorialize that. But I think what's equally important is that we also focus on the fact that Jews were here because this was the best place in the world for Jews to be for hundreds and hundreds of years. The most magnificent times in the Jewish history happened here in Poland. The kinds of Jews that Ashkenazi Jews have become originated here in Poland, and a lot of that gets just ignored because of the trauma of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
So I think as we move further away from the Holocaust, it's important, in my opinion, that Jews start rebuilding their relationships to Poland in positive ways, as well as in relationship to the Holocaust.
And some of your artistic projects explore the trauma of the lack of presence or the unconscious, sometimes, anti-Semitism. And could you tell more about your project, The Lucky Jew? Now, our viewers might not be aware that in many places in Poland, especially where there are more tourists, you can buy supposedly lucky paintings or lucky figurines of Jews, and that's supposed to, once you have that image that at your home, that's supposed to bring you financial good fortune. Do you remember your first sort of a visceral feeling when you saw these lucky Jews?
Yeah, I do. I mean, to be honest, I couldn't stop laughing. It was just, it was just so blatantly problematic. I just couldn't believe it. The irony of being in Poland and seeing these images that I understood as incredibly anti-Semitic being sold on the streets of Krakow, and people were buying them for good luck, primarily good economic luck. There was just so much irony that these images that had been used as excuses for the persecution of Jews had been shifted somehow during communism to represent something positive for Polish people. It was just so bad that I knew it could not be rooted in anti-Semitism because it was just too blatant. And although the images are rooted in anti-Semitism, I was able to learn and understand that people just really believe that because Jews, the stereotype of Jews is that they're historically good with money. Yeah. If you've got one for your business, for your home, you too may have financial fortune.
And I believe that through sort of an artistic but also direct action, you managed somewhat to change that perception in Krakow. Is that right?
Yeah, together with Festiwald, the organization I run with my wife, Magda Korolewsko-Rubenfeld, and Jason Francisco, who was also a founding member, we came up with an idea for something called The Lucky Jew, which is actually a name that we borrowed from an academic named Erika Lehrer, because they're not called Lucky Jews, they're called Jew with a coin. But I decided to dress up as a real-life Lucky Jew and go out onto the streets of Krakow. And my wife, who's a graphic designer, made images of myself holding money, images that very much resembled these other images that were being sold for good luck. And we started at a marketplace called the Emmaus Easter Market, which happens the day after Easter in Krakow, and is a very famous market and was known because it was the place that a lot of local people would go and buy their Lucky Jew for the year.
But so that, I can see the irony, and I can see that artistic project was, if I can say, light-hearted. But the one that you also is visible in your social media, Would You Hide Me, that strikes a very different note. Can you tell us more about it?
Sure. Well, this is the beginning of a project, a long-term project where I go onto the streets of Krakow and I ask people if the Nazis return, would they hide me if I needed a hiding spot? And this has come out of a lot of argument that I've heard primarily from Jewish people believing that more Polish people should have hid Jewish people during the war. And also from Polish people who believe that a lot of Polish people will say that, the Poles hid Jews sort of as a blanket statement. The reality is that most people didn't do anything. They were just trying to survive, because if you were caught hiding a Jew, you would be murdered, and so would your entire family. And so I guess I wanted to ask a provocative question to see in a split-second moment what somebody would do if they were faced with having to hide me, because frankly, I think it's a really difficult question. If you knew that you would be putting your family in danger. I have a 6-year-old son. If someone told me, would you hide me and put your own child in danger? I don't think that in a way, it's not a fair question because no one can actually answer that unless they're in the situation. And I also think it's quite unfair to judge people who made the decision not to, because we weren't there.
And many of your projects, not just these two, are some sort of a springboard to discussing and diving into that Polish relationship and the past and the future and even a potential future. Can you talk briefly about your project with the famous actor of the Polish middle generation, Maciej Sztur? How is that future envisaged?
Gosh, yeah, so this is a show, it's called Poland is Not Yet Lost, and it takes place in an imagined futuristic Poland where Israel has been destroyed and 3 million Jewish Israelis have returned to Poland. Maciej Sztur, who agreed to be my president. I thought it would be funny to have him as the president, partly because I like the idea of our famous comedic actor maybe feeling a bit jealous that Zelensky is getting all this attention in Ukraine, and so he wanted to compete. But also, Sztur has a very specific relationship. After Pokłosie, the film Aftermath, a lot of people were angry with him, but he's also been a real advocate for Polish-Jewish relations, and so I just felt like he would be a really great figure for this. And in the play, which is a satire, it's a comedy, he himself converts to Judaism in a reality television show called Maciej Sztur, Finding My Inner Hebrew. And it's a big hit, and 3 million non-Jewish Poles also convert to Judaism. Okay. So now there are twice as many Jews in Poland as there were before the war. And the play takes place on the eve of the referendum, where Poland will be deciding in a vote whether it will become the new Jewish state.
Michael Rubenfeld, is it right, listening to you, to say that your coping mechanism with that trauma of the Holocaust, especially thinking now about the anniversary that's looming, is to you, your sense of humor? Are there, what are the feelings now before those events? Will you go with your family to Oświęcim? How are you coping emotionally?
I would go if I could, even though I don't like to spend too much time focusing on the Holocaust. As a Jew with my background, I grew up inundated with the Holocaust, as you can imagine. Very difficult stories, very, very painful stories. And, in a way, I moved to Poland so that I could actually find a way to unburden myself with some of that trauma. And, I think for me, I have questions about, the visiting of concentration camps and seeing what you do. I think they're really important to do and to go to. I'm glad I've been to Auschwitz once in my life. And it's a very triggering, difficult place to go. But I don't feel like the answers towards unburdening of trauma lie in Holocaust, in Holocaust sites, in concentration camps. I think it lives within the context of life, of thinking about living culture. And Jews are, go ahead.
Jews are very resilient. And Michael, I really wish you and your family on that very momentous day, some sort of peace and ways of celebrating that day together. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. And that was Pulse of Culture, and I'm Karolina Shapland.